It's August 13th, 2 p.m. on a Wednesday here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Na Hyun-kyung. Let's check out the stories making headlines at this hour. Korea's ruling and opposition parties lock horns at the National Assembly over a special bill that will determine the details of a probe into April's ferry sinking. The nation's key interest rate for the month of August will be determined tomorrow. Market analysts expect the rate to be cut for the first time in more than a year. And Pope Francis will be in town for 5 days. Starting tomorrow, the Korean Catholic community is putting the final touches on its preparations. And let's begin at the National Assembly. Korea's two main rival parties have long been haggling over a special bill that is supposed to get to the bottom of what caused and who is to blame for April's deadly ferry sinking. But the bill didn't make it to today's plenary session. Our National Assembly correspondent Ji Myung-kil says as of now, the prospects aren't looking bright.
The special Sewol-ho ferry bill aims to create an inquiry panel that will determine the exact cause of the deadly sinking in mid-April, which left 304 people dead or missing. The rival parties disagree on whether to give the inquiry panel prosecutorial powers, meaning the bill has been sat in limbo for weeks. The ruling Saenuri Party is against the idea of giving the inquiry panel prosecutorial powers and says the time for negotiations is over.
I'm speechless. What are we getting out of this political deadlock? What's the essence of democracy? What are we going to say to our future generations?
Saenuri Party lawmakers say that giving such overreaching powers to authorities other than state prosecutors would set a dangerous precedent. Prosecutorial powers refer to special legal prerogatives, such as the right to ask the courts for search warrants or detain suspects. The main opposition party, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, and the bereaved families say the panel will be unable to reveal the root causes of the disaster without such powers and blame the bill's delay on the ruling party.
Our party has been trying to offer leadership to the parliament. I've tried to break the impasse and have done my best to cooperate.
Last week's compromise between rival parties' floor leaders did not give the inquiry panel legal powers, which prompted the victims' families and some opposition lawmakers to demand the deal be nullified. If the political discord continues, the ruling party may find it much more difficult to pass urgent bills, while the opposition party could be facing yet another leadership crisis. Ji Myung-kil, ARIRANG News.
The world's largest math conference kicked off in Seoul this Wednesday. President Park Geun-hye was at the event emphasizing the importance of math in our everyday lives. And she also asked the participants to make the subject a little less intimidating for the rest of us. Choi Yu-sun has this story.
It's the first time Korea is hosting the International Congress of Mathematicians, which has been held every 4 years since 1897. Organizers of the Seoul Congress say Korea's rapid development in the field of mathematics was a major reason it was awarded the global event. This was also reflected in the decision to have a Korean mathematician deliver a keynote speech. Under the slogan Dreams and Hopes for Late Starters, this year's host nation has also offered grants to nearly 1,000 mathematicians from developing countries so they can participate. President Park Geun-hye at the opening ceremony highlighted the role mathematics plays in the development of humanity.
한 사람의 뛰어난 창의력과 아이디어가 세계를 움직이는 창조와 혁신의 시대에 진입하였고 수학을 통해서 배우는 창의성과 논리적, 합리적 사고야말로 미래를 이끌어갈 인재들이 반드시 갖추어야 할 요소이기도 합니다.
The president also talked about the need to bridge the gap between the academia of mathematics and the general public.
수학이 수학자들만의 학문이 아니라 미래를 이끌어갈 젊은이들과 일반 대중들이 친근하게 접하고 이해할 수 있는 학문으로 발전해 가기를 기대하고 있습니다.
To achieve that very goal, a list of events, such as a special lecture by James Simons, a mathematician turned hedge fund manager, and an open meeting with a laureate of the Congress's Distinguished Fields Medal are lined up. The event will run at COEX Southern Seoul until August 21st. 최유선, 아리랑 뉴스.
And over in Japan, Tokyo is looking to designate 10 inhabited remote islands near its borders as special border remote islands to promote protection and development. Japan's Yomiuri Shimbun says a bill that's likely to be submitted to Parliament in the fall will call on the government to construct self-defense force facilities on those islands. Candidates for special border remote islands include the Oki Islands in Shimane Prefecture. The Oki Islands are around 160 kilometers away from Korea's Dokdo Island, a territory Japan claims to have sovereignty over. Now, meanwhile, Japan's Kyodo News Agency reports over 100 senior maritime self-defense force officers visited the Yasukuni War Shrine back in May. That's the very shrine Korea and China see as a celebration of Japan's past imperialism, as several Class A war criminals are laid to rest there. And staying with Japan expanding military presence, a group of Japanese firms are planning a test flight next year for the nation's first homegrown stealth fighter jet. The consortium, led by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, is reportedly developing a jet that has similar technology to U.S.-made F-35 stealth fighters. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
This is Japan's new generation of stealth fighter jets, the Shinshin. It's 14 meters long and equipped with double engines to produce extra lift and power control mid-air. It's largely aimed at rivaling the stealth capability of China's fighter jets, the Zen-20, which will be combat-ready in 2017. The latest model, manufactured by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, is being prepared for flight experiments in January of next year, and the Japanese Defense Ministry says it's expected to put them into use by the year 2030.
Up until now, airplanes faced risks of damage if the front part tilted upwards. However, with the alteration of the exhaust system, the new model is designed to fly fast even if the front part tilted upwards.
The development of high-tech weaponry by the Japanese government is being met with concerns that it will trigger an arms race in Northeast Asia, already plagued with unresolved territorial and historical spats. It also comes as Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party plans to propose a bill to expand the range of military activity of its self-defense forces in the region. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Now, around this time tomorrow, Pope Francis will have already started his 5-day visit to Korea. He will be greeted by President Park Geun-hye at the Seoul Air Base on Thursday. It is his first trip to Asia as a pontiff and the first papal visit to Korea in 25 years. Here's our Hwang Ji-hye with a rundown of the Pope's trip.
Pope Francis won't be wasting any time upon his arrival in Korea on Thursday morning. After a short welcoming ceremony, he will head to the presidential office and meet President Park Geun-hye. On Friday, the Pope will head to Daejeon to lead a mass at the city's World Cup stadium. There, he will console bereaved families and victims of April's Sewol-ho ferry disaster. On Saturday morning, the Pope will visit Seosomun Martyrs Shrine, where the largest number of Catholics were executed in the 19th century. After paying respect at the shrine, he will parade through Gwanghwamun Square to beatify 124 Korean martyrs. Beatification is a declaration by the Pope as the head of the church that the deceased faithfully lived a holy life and are now dwelling in heaven. And it's no coincidence that the ceremony is taking place in the heart of Seoul, where the Justice Ministry was located around 200 years ago.
The Pope starts from where the martyrs lived their final moments and goes back to where they were declared sinners to beatify them. He is correcting the past and trying to heal the history of the persecution of Catholics.
On Sunday, he will lead a concluding mass for the 6th Asian Youth Day at Hemi Fortress, located in the nation's southwest region. Around 2,000 young Catholics from 23 different Asian countries and some 4,000 young Korean Catholics will take part. On the morning of his last day in Korea, the Pope will hold a mass for peace and reconciliation at Seoul's Myeongdong Cathedral. Many expect the Pope to convey a message of hope and healing to those who are poor and marginalized, as his visit also includes meeting with the victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery, laid-off workers from Korea's Sangyong Motor, and a trip to a rehabilitation center called 꽃동네. The Pope will fly back to Rome next Monday afternoon. Hwang Jie, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Na Hyung-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. The Bank of Korea will decide its key interest rate tomorrow. There are expectations that the rate will be cut. If it is taken down a notch, it will be the first such movement in 15 months and would suggest that BOK policies are falling in line with the Finance Ministry's efforts to stimulate the economy. Our Son Jung-in has this report.
Among economists is a widely held belief that the Bank of Korea will cut its benchmark interest rate at Thursday's Monetary Policy Committee. Now the focus is on by how much. Reflecting the expectations, the yield on 3-year government debt has slid over the last couple of months, inching closer to the key interest rate. According to polls, 8 out of 10 financial experts estimate that a cut of 0.25 percentage points would push the benchmark Kospi index up by 60 to 70 points.
If the government and the central bank fail to cooperate on lowering the interest rate, the effects of new policy measures to boost the economy may be in vain in the short term.
Pundits speculate that Central Bank Governor Lee Ju-yeol gave the signal to cut the rate at the policy meeting last month. However, there are concerns that a rate cut may not be as effective as many anticipate and that it won't help to address swelling household debt, which has now surpassed $1 trillion.
A lower interest rate causes an increase in household debt, so a rate cut may help the economy in the short term. But there are potential risk factors that could lead to more household debt in the future.
That puts the Bank of Korea in a tough spot. Another rate freeze will almost certainly trigger criticism over not working in step with market policy, while an interest rate cut without offering clear reasoning may mean lost trust from the public over the abrupt decision. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
And the number of new jobs rebounded in July after shrinking for the previous 4 months, fueling hopes of a pickup in the nation's economic recovery. Statistics Korea says job growth topped 500,000 in July from less than 400,000 the month before, after peaking at 835,000 in February. Now, employment improved in particular in the manufacturing, retail, and construction sectors. The jobless rate, however, also inched up to 3.4% in July. Now, young job seekers are still facing tough conditions, with the jobless rate among those aged 15 to 29 standing at 8.9%. A new study shows 60% of Koreans these days feel as though they are struggling to keep pace with their neighbors. Our Kim Min-ji takes a look at what's making them feel so unstable.
6 out of every 10 Koreans say they feel insecure about their socioeconomic status. In a survey conducted by the Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs on 1,000 people, 60% of respondents said they felt unstable. Half of them said they felt quite unstable, 22% generally unstable, and 8% very unstable. Just 1% of those who responded said they felt very stable about their socioeconomic state. Then what is it making Koreans feel so unsteady? Insufficient income topped the list, followed by job insecurity, a growing distrust in society, a lack of government support, and health issues. As for everyday concerns, the respondents cited reasons ranging from their jobs and what they'll do post-retirement to education, health, and safety. The feelings of socioeconomic insecurity aren't unwarranted. While the income of two-person households in urban areas has risen 16% over the last 5 years, household spending has far outpaced it. As a result of increased spending on housing and education, the number of low and middle-income households in debt has risen, with nearly 70% now having to pay off interest and principal. As of 2012, about 60% of households had an average debt of about $60,000. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
This week alone, 3 soldiers in the Korean military have committed suicide. The sad truth is that it's not the first time we are hearing this kind of news. Our Shin Se-min reports on what's being done to prevent similar tragedies happening again in the future.
An Army private first class, previously identified as a soldier who required extra attention, committed suicide by shooting himself in the head during a live fire exercise on Tuesday. One day earlier, 2 Army corporals were found dead together in an apartment suicide while on furlough. Both were also classified as soldiers who needed extra supervision as they had exhibited suicidal tendencies in personality testing. In their suicide notes, the 2, whose names are being withheld from the media, said they had been abused in their barracks, with one of them writing he even wanted to kill one of his superiors. These are the latest in a series of tragedies involving enlisted soldiers in recent weeks, all after experiencing physical and mental abuse, often at the hands of their seniors. According to the military data, over 820 soldiers have taken their own lives since 2004. 47 of those cases have taken place this year. The Defense Ministry and new Army Chief Kim Yo-han have vowed to address the problem and reform military culture. They've promised a renewed focus on counseling and programs on suicide prevention and anti-bullying. But they'll need to fund their efforts. Of the military's budget of $34 billion this year, just $123,000 went toward educating Korea's 600,000 troops through the types of programs and courses dedicated to preventing tragedies like these from occurring. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
The United States is beefing up its presence in Iraq. Washington says it will send an additional 130 military personnel to the Kurdish part of Iraq. U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel says they will be military advisors and will not engage in combat. The group of 130 are reported to be Marines and Special Operations Forces who will help assess the humanitarian situation there. Now this, as the United Nations had said earlier that tens of thousands of Yazidis are still trapped on Mount Sinjar and are in grave need of food, water, and shelter. On the political front, pressure for Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki to step aside is growing. One of the biggest supporters, Iran, has announced it will now back Prime Minister designate Haider al-Abadi as U.S. Vice President Joe Biden urges Kurdish leaders to work with Abadi. He has 30 days to pull together a cabinet and form a new government. Now, the Ebola outbreak has claimed its first European casualty. 75-year-old Spanish missionary priest Miguel Pajares passed away yesterday after being administered the test drug ZMapp 3 days earlier. This, as the World Health Organization approved the use of experimental drugs in the treatment of Ebola patients. Following discussions amongst the medical experts, the WHO concluded it is ethical to use unlicensed medication in light of the sheer scale of the outbreak and the number of deaths, which now exceeded 1,000. The maker of the test serum ZMapp said it has now run out of the test serum after its final doses were sent to a West African nation, and Liberia confirmed that it was the recipient of those doses, which it said would be used to treat 2 infected doctors, the first Africans to receive the treatment. Now, the Pope's upcoming arrival is keeping Koreans very excited. If you're curious about Pope Francis and his story, you are in luck. Im Yuni joins me this afternoon with a photo exhibition that's dedicated to Pope Francis. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Right. So this exhibition is located at Sejong Center, and that's at the Gwanghwamun Square. And now they say the picture is worth 1,000 words, and I think you'll find some of these photos have quite the story to tell about Pope Francis. So take a look.
Considered one of the most powerful figures in the world, the Pope leads an estimated 1.2 million people as head of the Roman Catholic Church. But who is this man, welcomed by over 1 million lives across the globe? Pope Francis assumed papacy in March of 2013 and has since then established a reputation as one of the most non-conventional popes to take the seat, even earning a nickname as the People's Pope.
This picture was taken right after Pope Francis was elected, and contrary to previous popes, he chose not to wear the traditional ornate robe and hat. Instead, he wore his everyday robe. So the others were stunned. On the other hand, Pope Francis appeared calm, saying that a shepherd should smell like sheep. This is a scene meant for everyone, and that's exactly the message he wanted to send.
The exhibition has on display over 140 different photographs, 40 of them from the Vatican itself, home of the Pope. The various different shots capture scenes of Pope Francis along his papal journey, as well as scenes of other members of the Roman Catholic Church over the years. Another contributor to the exhibition is photographer Baek Nam-sik. He's followed pontiffs for 46 years, capturing major Vatican events with the click of his camera.
Long ago, the Colosseum was a place where many Catholics were massacred by lions. So every year on Good Friday, thousands of Catholics, along with the Pope, gather to pray at the site. There are about 30,000 people here, but this time, at Gwanghwamun, I think there will be over 300,000 people in attendance.
The Pope is set to land this Thursday in Seoul, and these pictures have sparked curiosity ahead of time, showing support in Korea for Pope Francis, the People's Pope.
So it looks like it's going to be a very family-friendly event where you can take your kids for education purposes.
Right. So in fact, when I was there, I did see a lot of families, a lot of children especially. And so people were saying that, this is a great exhibition to go check out because they really did feel like they were able to get close to the Pope and get to know him a little bit better. But the fact that they could do so just by pictures, really speaks testament truth to the fact that he really is the People's Pope. And, people really do feel like they can't approach him.
Right. So in just a day's time, we will be able to see him in person.
Right.
And it'll be a crazy idea to drive to the Gwanghwamun area. Though.
Right.
You said that's where the exhibition is taking place.
You are going to want to go check it out pretty soon, or maybe after the beatification ceremony that's to take place this Saturday. So the beatification ceremony is going to be held at the Gwanghwamun Square this Saturday, which is also the location of the Sejong Center where the exhibition takes place. And so for safety reasons, they are going to block off most of the square and the buildings around it starting from Friday afternoon. So if you do want to check out the exhibition, you're going to want to go today, maybe tonight.
All right, so we're going to have a busy week ahead. We have a busy week ahead of us. Thank you very much,
My pleasure,
for your report today.
The air is quite polluted with yellow dust today here in Seoul, and an ultra-fine dust advisory could be issued if the levels inch up a bit higher. In the meantime, other areas should see more clouds moving in, with regions down south expect to see rain shower this evening. So 5 to 20 millimeters are expected for the central parts of the nation, while heavier showers are expected for down south. And it's likely to rain until Friday, while the more more northern areas will say rain on Sunday afternoon. So Liberation Day on Friday and Pope Francis' beatification ceremony on Saturday morning should be rain-free here in Seoul. And as for today, due to the cloud coverage, nationwide temperatures will remain below 30 degrees Celsius. As the daytime high in the capital, Gwangju and Busan will all hike up to 28 this afternoon. And for other regions, it looks like Daejeon and Jeju will hike up to 27 and 26 respectively, and Mount Keungang will hike up to 19 later in the day. Well, that's all for me today, and back to you, Hyung-kyung, in the studio.
All right, thank you, Ji-hyun, for that. That's all we have for you now. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with more at 4 p.m. Korea time.